Now, Doctor Who is one of those things that I have grown up with all of my life. And a massive part of that show for me is the Daleks. So today, I've decided to rank all Doctor Who episodes involving the Daleks in the modern series. Let's go. Quick disclaimer, today I'm ranking Dalek stories, so focused on the Daleks. So for example, Day of the Doctor, the Series 5 finale, the Season 10 opener. I'm not going to be including them in this list because I'm specifically looking at Dalek stories. So, let's go. At number 11 is Asylum of the Daleks. This episode just doesn't really work at all. I think as a Dalek story, the Amy and Rory subplot is just too much in the foreground for it to be counted as a really good Dalek story. It doesn't really discuss any new ideas, any new themes, and it tries to do lots of like Easter eggs with like Daleks of the past, and it really just doesn't work, this episode. I've never particularly enjoyed it. At number 10 is Daleks in Manhattan / the evolution of the Daleks. I think this has really not aged well. I always genuinely kind of thought this was just kind of like a fun adventure as a kid, but rewatching this, it really doesn't work. Some absolutely horrendous American accents in this episode. The pig slaves, just not good storytelling. Also, in Army of Ghosts Doomsday, the Cult of Skaro was and still is to me such a cool thing. However, they really are reduced to nothingness in this episode, honestly. It's just really not good storytelling. Number 9 is Victory of the Daleks. This is an episode that actually does kind of work for me in the first half of the episode. I think just the idea of Churchill working with Daleks and thinking like his team of like created Daleks, and even the way we see Matt Smith interacting with those war Daleks is so cool. However, then we get into the colourful toy selling Daleks that never did anything cool in the entirety of the Moffat era, and honestly, it just didn't really work out for them, did it? Number 8 is The Magician's Apprentice / The Witch's Familiar. Now this for me is a very good Davros story. I think Peter Capaldi talking to Davros and those interactions are just very well done. Yeah, the eye opening is a bit weird, but you know, there's some very interesting interactions going on there. However, again, the Daleks do absolutely nothing in this episode. Literally nothing. Moving on. Number 7 is Revolution of the Daleks, the most recent Dalek story. Now this to me is popcorn Doctor Who. It's not particularly amazing popcorn Doctor Who, it's not particularly bad popcorn Doctor Who, it's just, it exists. And yeah, I think while on first viewing I was kind of enjoying it all the way through. There were definitely some things after the fact that I was kind of irritated by, which is a full video in the card up there, so go watch it. Number 6, I'm going to give to Into the Dalek. Now this for me is the Dalek story that is perfectly built for Peter Capaldi. I think this episode fits brilliantly into his first series arc of whether he's actually a good person. I think there's a lot of things that are discussed here that are very interesting, and the idea that he kind of like resents this Dalek and then almost tries to help it just for it to be what he thought it was going to be in the first place. I think it's a really fun story, and I really do like it being part of Doctor Who, whilst not necessarily being the most memorable of episodes for the show. Number 5 is Resolution. Now I know a lot of people have problems with Jodie's era, and there'll probably be comments on this video going, put them at the bottom. I don't really care about people that think like that, honestly. If you look at this episode, it is a very good Dalek episode. One of the things that the Moffat era, and also in some ways the Russel Davies era, did to the Daleks was made them slightly less scary, and this episode brings back the fear factor. When the Dalek is on Lynn's body and it's just controlling her, those are some really well directed scenes, and they're just really quite scary. I think the smaller scale does help. There's slightly less stakes wise that happens, and overall that does just make this a tighter story. Number 5 is Army of Ghosts / Doomsday. Now as a kid, this was one of the coolest episodes for me. I mean, it's 2 of the most iconic Doctor Who villains fighting each other. Like, that to me was awesome. Like, I also think here, unlike the one at the lower of the list, the Cult of Skaro here are so cool. They're really great characters, and I just really enjoy what it kind of means for the Daleks going forward, and the idea that they had this team that was built to make sure the Daleks survived. That was a really cool concept. Yeah, the Dalek Cyberman fight, if you actually boil it down, is very much just the Daleks kill Cybermen. But you know, it still works. It's still fun, and I like it. It's my list. So yeah. Number 3, The Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways. I think the thing that really sticks out to me about this episode is how mad the Daleks feel. They've gone almost insane, and it's brilliant. I think just having them be so mad and deranged, it just puts a new light on them, and that's what I like with Dalek stories, when they just do something a bit new and a bit different. Also, throughout this episode, the Daleks just win. They just keep on winning and going up new levels and killing like important characters, and you know, like making the Daleks feel like they can just do anything is something that just makes them scary, and that is really cool to me. And number 2, and people might say this is a gimmicky choice, but I'm going to go with Stolen Earth and The Journey's End. The Journey's End? Isn't it just Journey's End? Now, I mentioned the term popcorn Doctor Who earlier, and this to me is the epitome of that. I talked about low stakes working as part of an earlier episode, and this is an episode where the high stakes 100% work. This genuinely feels like Doctor Who Infinity War, and having the Daleks involved and having them just be so maniacal, and it's just all so brilliant. The stakes, literally everything dying. I mean, that's stakes. That's that. You thought the stakes were here? No, they're up here. Overall, I just have a lot of fun with this episode, and quite frankly, as a Dalek story it works, but just as general fun and just brilliant Doctor Who, it's going high on the list. Do I care? No. But number 1, as you all saw coming, was Dalek. This episode, as a child, was honestly terrifying. I've never felt an episode just be so intense, and I talked about the Daleks keeping winning earlier. This was the episode that epitomised that. It just feels like an unstoppable force, and that is scary. The idea that you pretty much couldn't stop it. I mean, if Rose didn't touch it and bond with it in a slightly odd way, like, that Dalek would have just killed everything. Like, I think it fits brilliantly with Eccleston's Doctor, and overall, it's a very, very fun, exciting episode, and I very, very much enjoy it. So, that was my list. I'd love to see your list in the comments. Include whatever Dalek stories you want. If you want to include some classic stories, that's fine. And hopefully you've clicked the subscribe button, so I'll see you soon.
This is Willany, and if you're not already subscribed to the Nerdy Brit, right, you should be, right? If you're not, you're a loser too.